You're listening to the Faith and Other Oddities podcast, brought to you by the Raven Creek Social Club, where we talk about faith and other oddities. For questions, comments, or to be part of the conversation, join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can find us at Raven Creek SC. Now for your hosts, Emily Dixon and Nathan Underwood.
Hey everyone, welcome to a special interview episode of Faith and Other Oddities. We've got George from Germany here, and I'm calling him that because he pronounces it with sounds I can't make. So I can't roll R's. I can't do the...
You can't do that?
I can't do... No.
So pronounce it for us correctly.
Well, we're here in the southern U.S., so we have lazy speech and lazy tongues.
Well, no, I'm Georg Warnecke, and I'm coming from Germany. Hi, guys.
Yeah, it's because if you're an Okie, we just say Warnecke.
I thought so, and that sounds weird.
Oh, sorry. Well, we'll work on it afterwards. I'll try to call you by the right name.
No worries.
So, but yeah, Emily, do you want to kind of fill us in a little bit about who George is and why he's on the program, and then he can let us know even more about himself.
That sounds like a plan. So, no, I actually about 10 years ago, right around the time that George started this page on Facebook called Sundries, began following Sundries, and then we got to having some interactions on Facebook, and they were great interactions, and I enjoyed the conversation. And over these past years, we've kind of gotten to know each other, and you happen to be in the United States and decided to stop in, of all places, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So we're getting a chance to hang out with you and to prove to everyone that you do exist.
He is a real person.
You are not a figment of the internet. And so we've been having a ball. Got to take you out to dinner last night. Got to enjoy lunch together today.
Yeah, got to introduce him to Southern barbecue.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And some fried pickles. So basically we wanted to take a chance to not only introduce you to our listeners, but we're hoping that some of your fan base is going to respond and actually enjoy getting a chance to hear your voice and get to know you a little bit more than what's just on the text of Facebook. And so we're excited. You act like it's no big deal, but it's awesome.
It's not a big deal.
Oh, no, it's great. So let's begin with, since I did meet you through Sundries, tell us a little bit about Sundries, why it was started, and kind of what the purpose behind the page was.
Purpose? No, I just started it about 10 years ago. It was just to keep notes and thoughts and find them again. Back then, I didn't realize how Facebook really worked, and it turned out that many people started to follow that page. I have no idea why. And it's about, I called it a Lutheran pub. Means a pub is a place where you can talk about everything, and you don't have to watch for your language. I mean, it's like, if you ever have heard about Martin Luther, he had this book called Table Talks, and it's according to that. It's just tidbits, nuts and bolts, sundries about faith, Christian faith, Lutheran faith, just things I found on the internet. So it's not really original. Every once in a while I post something of my own thoughts. And the idea was not to convince people of anything, but about showing those people who are thinking alike that they are not alone.
And I think the page does that. I mean, you reach thousands of people a week.
After 10 years, we've reached the number of about 27,000 plus, and it's still growing.
And it's very low key. It's like an oasis on Facebook.
Is it?
You scroll through your feed, and there's this nice post that makes you stop and think, but there's not a lot of drama. There's not a lot of bickering. It's something that makes you think. And I think there's some value in that. A lot of Facebook posts don't have. And I know you're making faces, but it's it's true. And I think that's why so many people are drawn to it, because faith, I think, is a huge topic for anyone, whether they're Christian, Muslim, Hindu. The faith is so central to who we are as human beings. So this is a very Lutheran page, obviously. So I wanted to ask you too, why Lutheran? Why are you Lutheran? And what does that mean to you to be Lutheran?
Good question. Let me ask you back. What do you know about Lutheranism? I mean, you who are listening to this podcast, what do you know about Lutheranism? I mean, is it just some guy back in history who rebelled against the Pope, or what? Let me put this first. I grew up atheist, totally atheist. I mean, we in Germany, going to church at least on Christmas, on the first day of Christmas, is a big thing. I mean, the churches are crowded and packed, and we didn't even go to church on Christmas. I mean, I grew up with Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and other fairy tales like that. And why Lutheran? There was a point in my life where I just stumbled across the Bible, and I just read it, and it was a point in my life where I read a lot of books. I read the Quran. I read the how to pronounce that in English? The Bhagavad Gita.
That's exactly the same.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Or the Vedas, and stuff like that. I was into this esoteric stuff, and so the Bible was just one book amongst others. I did this yoga thing, and it felt right back then. But since I am a German and I like thinking and I like reason, somehow it didn't satisfy my mind. And when I stumbled across the Bible, I found that it's different. It doesn't exactly tell the same stories as in you just have to be a good person and try to aim for being better or somewhat like that. I mean, most religions are like how to put this? Like you just have to work hard for whatever you call it, salvation or the nirvana or whatever. And if the gods have a good day, you will reach your final goal. But in the end of the day, it's just, yeah, if they have a good day, and if they have a bad day, bad luck for you.
I'm going to steal that. If the gods have a good day. That's a really good way of putting that.
And Christianity was different. I mean, it was just like, hey, everything is done. It's already done. Relax. You don't have to do anything. And now we come to Lutheranism. It's just pure grace, with no strings attached.
Can you define grace for someone who might be listening to this and isn't familiar with that term?
God loves you no matter what, and He is giving you His grace, His love for free. I mean, usually we are used to think about there is no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
We tend to think that we have to earn it in any way, and how I understood and still understand Jesus is, you can't do anything to please God. It's not yours. I mean, He's giving it to you for free because He loves you, because He's love. and that was amazing back then. I mean, when you think about it, someone offers you a present just like that. We're not used to that.
It can be very uncomfortable.
So
yes, we want to pay back in a way.
I'm curious. You said you came across the Bible, and so did you just read it like from straight through Genesis to Revelation?
Yeah, and it was boring on many passages. I mean, if you look at all the
genealogies,
thank you. Afterwards, when I started to study theology, I've learned that there's more behind these genealogies. But back then, it was just like, okay, I want to get this through and read further on and read. No, not today, tomorrow. By the way, if you read, you can read the Bible in just 1 year if you read about 4 chapters per day, and it's not very much.
No, not very much at all.
When you did it the 4th or the 5th or the 6th time, you will see the connections between the First Testament and the Second Testament, which might known to your listeners as the Old and
it's great because it's confirming what we keep saying. You just have to keep getting into the scriptures, and the more you read, the more familiar you become, the more you see those connections.
Exactly.
But you can't get there if you don't put the work in.
Yeah.
Right.
And it has to be a labor of love, in my opinion.
Yeah, that might be one little thing, one little string attached.
I'm curious. I want to kind of follow up with this idea. So when you read through the Bible, when you read through it, did you kind of immediately see the not necessarily overall connections, but did you see like the basic plan of salvation through that, or did you have to follow up by asking some churchgoers or ministers? Or
is this a trick question?
No, I'm curious because I'll tell you the reason for my question is I actually I was listening to a podcast and it's actually it's a terrible podcast. Don't listen to it. But I listened to a few episodes of this podcast, and they were these atheists who would watch Christian movies and then like make fun of them. And in one of the movies, of course, the Christian movie trope is that someone finds a Bible and reads through it and finds salvation. And their claim is that you can't just find salvation by reading the Bible, because there's so much violence and war and things like that in the Bible. And so I'm kind of curious about that.
I think at the first time I didn't understand much.
Okay.
To be honest. But what I understood is that there's this big guy above who's caring about what's going on this earth, and who even every once in a while tries to intervene with our matters. So and the farther you go into scripture, the more you understand that it's not just something which is for everyone, but it's also for you. It's meant for you. I don't say that just through reading the scripture I became a Christian, but it helped quite a lot. But it was a step on the journey.
Yeah, kind of started you on that path.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's even more. It's a long story, but too long for the podcast now.
I've got a pretty good sized hard drive on here. We can record a whole lot of stuff.
That we may have to like hog time and getting back in here tomorrow.
We'll see how it goes.
No, it's fascinating to us because we were raised in the church, and to see how people who didn't have that experience came to know Jesus and became a Christian and went through that whole conversion process. And we got to talk about that some last night. For us, it was kind of like the logical next step. And so we had to break away and rediscover it again. And that was kind of our journey. And I know it's true for a lot of people who grew up in the church in this part of Oklahoma. So that's another question I have. So as an outsider, as somebody coming to the United States, what are some of the differences you see between the way maybe Christianity's practiced in your hometown versus what you've seen here in your time?
I don't think that I'm long enough in this country to make a judgment about this. I mean, we are not supposed to judge
Right.
anyways. But from what I can see, there's a huge variety of Christian, let's say, flavors in this country, which in a way is okay because as I tend to see it, I mean, Christianity is like a garden with many flowers and many herbs, and it's colorful,
Mm-hmm.
and it's okay to have different flavors. But to me, the most important thing is grace with no strings attached. I mean, grace to me means, you know, to know that you are loved makes you strong in a way. I mean, when you raise a child and this child knows that it is precious, that it is, no matter what it does, that it is loved, it makes them strong in a way. That doesn't mean that the children don't do anything wrong or stuff like that.
Right.
And of course, a child needs to experience a no. But nevertheless, it is still loved, and that way it's easier to accept a no. So being a Christian means knowing that I am loved, and no matter what. So that way I can be pretty relaxed when meeting other people.
Yeah.
I mean, when I see you or people on the street, I know these children are loved by God, no matter how much of a jerk they behave.
For some of this, that's really good news.
I don't know. So I always try to see my neighbor as a loved child of God, even though he doesn't know it. So that's grace. It gives you the serenity to be relaxed when you meet other people.
And I think we've seen that. I
Mhm.
mean, you walked in, it was like finding a lost member of the family.
Yep.
Was it?
And and it was just fabulous. We've killed hours talking about just nothing.
Just sitting around talking. Yeah. And I told Mickey, I was like, it's really great. Cause I did feel like it was we just went out to dinner last night and had a good time. And I didn't feel like we were, I don't know. It's like,
it was very relaxed.
yeah. I don't know how to explain it. It's like you said, I guess like finding another
What
part of
did
the
you
family.
expect? I mean, there's coming this.
The Germans are coming.
Yeah, the Germans are coming
Yeah.
and shouting.
Well, no, I wasn't expecting that, but I'll be honest. I have a little social anxiety from time to time. It's
Nothing.
a lot
wrong with
easier
that.
to talk to people through headphones and a mic.
Well, kind of jumping track because we were wanting to bring up one issue that you've been very transparent with on Sundries and on Facebook, and that was the issue of depression in ministry. And so I wanted to talk to you some about that and kind of get a voice behind what's going on, and tell me a little bit about your experience, just what you feel comfortable. We don't want to go too deep, but I know you're not alone. I know so many people in ministry who have dealt with depression, who have been overwhelmed for whatever reason. Sometimes there's cultural factors, sometimes there's biochemical factors, sometimes, there's a combination. So I guess my question for you first, how much of your story are you comfortable sharing?
Let's see.
And how do you feel? I don't just want to talk about the problem. I would say, give us some insight as someone who's dealing with this. What would be a solution? What are positive things that fellow believers can do for people in ministry to help overcome some of these things? You know, how do we operate as a family, I guess, is the real question. I know it's big.
Yeah. First thing is, when you suffer depression, it's not your fault. This is the most important thing I would like to tell all those who suffer depression. It is not your fault at all. I mean, as you said, it might be because of biochemistry reasons, and it might be an outcome of PTSD. It might have something to do with your biography, things you've experienced in the past, and which, for whichever reason, suddenly pop up and change your life. Second thing I would like to say is, and those who suffer depression know that depression is your own personal hell. And there's not much you can do against that. It just overwhelms you. I mean, Winston Churchill had a nice picture. He called the depression the black dog who's accompanying him. And I like this picture because it's like a huge, big dog, black dog, who sits on you and you can't move, do anything. Interestingly, well, in my personal case, this depression was partly because of my PTSD and partly because I had an occupational burnout. And most of the time, no, well, often I'm a cheerful person, sort of. I mean, Germans are always serious, you know. Everybody knows that. I mean, there's some importance in being earnest. So, yeah, right now I'm working at the university, and we at an institute called IEEG. Don't let me say that in English. And we did a study. We recently did a study, and it will be published these days. 1/3 of all pastors in Germany are under the constant danger of burning out, of having an occupational burnout, which is quite a huge number. And I've seen numbers for the US which are even higher.
What do you think contributes to that?
Pastors often, I can only talk about my country. I don't know what it's like in the US, but pastors often put high pressure on themselves, really high pressure. I mean, we need to be perfect role models to the congregation, which puts us pastors way too often on a pedestal. But we are ordinary people. I mean, we're sinners and saints at the same time as everybody else, and that's a problem. The pressure we put on our own, and very often congregations tend to say that's your job, pastor, but from a biblical point of view, it's not. I mean, the Bible doesn't know the job of a pastor as we have it today.
Right.
On the other hand, but yeah, I mean, it's the pressure. I mean, the vocation of a pastor is to preach the word, to administer the sacraments, at least in the Lutheran Church, and to visit the sick together with other people from the congregation, and to study the Word of God. Because the way Lutherans think about vocation is the pastor is doing a job for the congregation, for the parish, which they can't do,
Right.
because they don't have the time for that. So he in a way, he's a teacher. Who or you might see it, he's the coach of a team, but he's not a CEO, or he's not the one who cleans the loo, or stuff like that. So we have different expectations, the congregations and the pastors, which is not always good. Yeah.
I know a lot of times, because Nathan and I, we grew up in a family full of pastors and people in ministry. We've tended to run with a lot of people in ministry on various levels. I've noticed that a lot of times pastors do not have friends, like real close friends. They have acquaintances. They have people they might go out to dinner with a couple of times, but they don't have anyone who's part of their life in that fulfilling role of just being a true friend. Have you found that to be true in your case?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you won't encourage, as a pastor, you won't encourage any kind of nepotism in your congregation. I mean, why is he close friend with that? Why not with me?
Right.
Right.
So the people would complain about that. They won't see that pastor needs friends. Pastors often, not always, but often are in a way very, what's the word? Lonely. Isolated, lonely, lone rangers. And way too often the congregation doesn't allow the pastor to be one of them.
Right.
Which actually he is. I mean, he's no different. I mean, he suffers the same problems, and there's nothing foreign to him what the congregants might going through.
Which is actually a good thing, because I think that allows pastors to have empathy and knowledge, firsthand experience, in order to be able to minister to their congregation. So I can see how that can be. To me, I think that would be probably one of the hardest parts of being in a ministry role, is not having those friends. And, I get it some with what I do, but not as much as I'm certain somebody who's officially in ministry gets it. So I that's one of my big concerns. So when I say big concerns for people in ministry, as I feel like one of the things we overlook is ministering to the minister, as those who are on the outside is saying, hey, wow, you are a human being with needs.
Yeah.
How do we meet them? So what would be a way that somebody in your congregation, if they would have reached out to you, what would have been something you would have liked to have seen from your congregation or the people you were ministering to? Sorry.
First things is, it's very important for a pastor to know that the congregation is praying for him. This is the most important thing, because if you pray for someone, before you can do that, you need to think about what to pray for. That means you need to know a little bit about the person you're praying for and his problems and what he's struggling with, stuff like that.
So don't just come to the pastor with your own problems.
Yes.
Maybe take some time to know
that might be a good idea, yeah. I mean, in the Apostolic Creed, it says it's a community of the saints, and the pastor is not holier than any other one of the congregation. So
that might be some news for a few pastors I know. Just that might
no
be
way.
Yeah,
no. The pastor, as some of the church fathers once put it. I forgot which one it was. I guess it was Augustine. And when in doubt, it's always St. Augustine. He said that the pastor is the first amongst equals. And that's what it should be, in my personal opinion. Yeah.
Well, I love the fact that you don't make this about a lack of faith, and that you don't make this about sin in a person's life. No,
depression has nothing to do with that. Depression is just an illness. I don't like the word mental illness. I mean, because when someone is mental, well,
there's so much stigma.
Yeah. Yep. And I know several pastors who are doing pretty well with depression, and but there are 2 or 3 things one might need to know. I mean, first thing is a pretty simple thing, is to exercise. It helps quite a lot. So doing let's say 10,000 steps per day I'm not talking about the gym. It's just what you can do every day. Um, the second thing is, it's good to know that people are supporting you and that they accept that you have. I mean, depression is not just a bad mood,
Right.
but that you have your days where you aren't able to cope with the whole thing. You're just sitting deep down in a black hole, and it sucks everything out from you, every joy, everything, every strength, and you barely can get up in the morning. I mean, it has nothing to do with being lazy or things like that. It's just you just can't, because um, doctors would say that the level of serotonin would be too low.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes medication can help,
Mm-hmm.
but not necessarily. There are studies which show that meds only help about 50% of people with mental illnesses. But what about the others?
Right.
So, and the third thing is that it's good to have a therapist, someone you trust, someone who is mirroring your thoughts, and just to make sure you're not going crazy mentally or whatever, that you're still a reasonable person. It's just, depression usually goes with you're worth nothing. You're a piece of shit. Excuse my French. Um, you're you don't deserve to live. You don't deserve your wife. You don't deserve your job. You don't deserve anything at all. And you can't get rid of these thoughts when going through a depressed phase. I mean, you can go for weeks pretty well, and then when you're not ready for it, then it hits you, and it just overwhelms you, and you can't do anything against that.
So, okay, so now I have to come back to your views on grace. Does that play into how you approach dealing with your depression? Is that a tool that you use, or?
I mean, grace, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, fair enough.
Not yet. I'm still struggling with the whole thing. I mean, when the thoughts are coming, you, as a depressed person, you even think that you're not worth of God's love, and that's you don't deserve to be saved or stuff like that. It's a good thing. What if you have the strength for that you still are going to church and receive the sacraments and listening to the word, even though it doesn't mean anything to you at this point, but being amongst people helps a bit. The worst thing you can do is just sitting in your room, staring through the windows and doing nothing. I mean, this is what you do when you're depressed. And but if you can do it, and it's a good thing if people around you know where you are, and that they know what you're struggling with, and that they know that a simple cheer up, mate,
Right.
doesn't help. I mean, it's not helpful, but just sitting with you there, like the friends of Job. I mean, they weren't jerks in a way. I mean, they said the wrong things, but as long as they just listened, that was pretty helpful. I mean, just being there, not commenting anything, not oh, you will get over it, or better times will come, or stuff like that. This is rubbish.
I agree.
Yeah, just being there, having a beer, having a smoke. Oh, you don't smoke, do you?
We aren't supposed to admit it anyway.
Okay. So, I mean, just doing things, and for example, to me, I mean, every person who struggles with depression needs to find out what it's for her or him. But to me, it's going sailing. I mean, sailing helps me quite a lot. I mean, when you're out there, it's I don't have the words for that, but everybody who sails knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Your whole demeanor changed when you started talking about sailing.
Right. Yeah. So you need to find out what gives you joy and doing it despite how you feel, and the rest will come. It's a constant struggle. It never ends. And it is good if we would, it would be good if we would accept that depression is just like having a broken leg or stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think doing things like this podcast and talking about it and being open about it. We've talked about before on our podcast that I'm bipolar. I make sure that that's just out there and that I can still be a functioning, contributing member of society. My worth and value is not tied up
Definitely
in
not.
this. And, I think that's true for no matter what we're dealing with.
That's an amazing thing. When I started to talk openly on Facebook about my depression, I received a lot of personal messages. Wait, what, you? And because, until those things happened to me, people tended to see me as a very strong person, as someone who leads, and as someone who gives good advice. And now depression is like a downfall. I mean, seriously. But what amazed me was the fact that there were so many people responding to that. And it led me to the conclusion that depression nowadays is some sort of, it's epidemic. And it amazed me. I mean, it doesn't help me personally to know that I'm not alone. It scares me, because what is it in our society which leads to that? That so many, I mean, it has a lot to do with working too hard, getting not enough praise for what you're doing. And I mean, we don't do that. In Germany, we have a saying, means not complaining is enough praise. So I don't know what it's like in your culture.
That explains some about
our
some
upbringing.
people I know. Yeah.
I was thinking, wow, you just summed up our childhood in like a phrase we didn't know we needed. So,
Yeah.
That's, and I kind of wondered too, because I know for you it's sailing. For me, being outdoors in almost any way is always beneficial. And so I often wonder, and maybe you've got some thoughts on this, if one of the reasons we're so depressed is because we put ourselves in these little boxes and with artificial light, and we're away from the earth, and we aren't seeing the beauty and the grandeur of God's creation that we were supposed to be connected with from early on. I mean, we were placed in a garden. I mean, that was where everything began. And I think for me, the idea has become that in separating ourselves from that, we miss some of the revelation and the beauty of God through his creation. And I think there's something healing about being in his presence. And I'm not saying go hug a tree or something like that. I mean, if you want to, go hug a tree. I don't care. But
yeah, right. Whatever grinds your gears.
But do you think for you, is it the act of sailing? Is it the ritual of, or is it being in?
Good question. I've never thought about that. It's just, the most beautiful sound when you go sailing is when you turn off the motor, and there's just the wind and the waves and you and nothing else. Maybe it's like you described it. I don't know. I've never thought about it. But the point is, I mean, you have to follow certain steps to go sailing. I mean, and it's if you don't do it right, you will have problems out there. So in a way,
life lesson for so many things right there.
Definitely. But I guess it's just being out there, and you don't have to talk. You can go with friends, and you don't have to talk. You can if you want to. I mean, you can vent a lot of problems out there. without any pressure and without the need of finding a solution. Sometimes it's when, apart from sailing, when you're together with friends, it's enough just to speak out the problems, just to put them into words. That helps quite a lot.
I think that kind of goes back to even the concept of confession. And
right,
there's-
definitely. But this is what Lutherans do, and I've heard Roman Catholics do it too, and maybe Episcopalians and Anglicans. I have no idea.
If they did, we did not.
Yeah, yeah. Confession is another. It's a whole different story. But yeah, you might be right.
I think it's interesting how often there are these mental health and self-care steps that mimic or follow spiritual well-being. The spiritual health guidelines of the Bible, if you will.
True.
And we think, oh, we've discovered something new, and it's like, no, we've got it in this book that's thousands of years old.
Sure, for sure.
So with the sailing, I have to point out too, everybody on Facebook kind of knows you as the skipper, because this is
yeah, right. I post some things about sailing and boats, and which I just love.
And it's obvious. And so I love the fact that this isn't just something that's a hobby for you. This is actually part of self-care, if I'm going to use the popular vernacular there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can ride a bicycle or a motorbike too. I mean, whatever grinds your gears.
Yeah. I'll say when we had a guest on that in the past, Justin, his thing was the gym. That's what he did. He would just go work out. It
sure.
Perked him up.
Yeah.
So I guess I should ask you too. So how did we manage to get this visitation of grace on our lives that you would stop by and spend so much time? Would you like to tell everybody why you're here in the United States?
I have attended a conference called Here We Still Stand. It's from time for advertising. It's for 1517.org. They have a lot of brilliant podcasts you should listen to listen to this podcast, of course.
Of course.
And you will find there a lot about the radical grace and radical Lutheranism. I think, I mean, we live in a merciless world, don't we? And grace is much needed in everybody's life, in a way. I've seen it so often. What struck me about the radical grace of God is you don't have to do anything for it. You don't have to show any what we call works righteousness. It's nothing. Look, God, I do this for you, and maybe you will do that for me then.
Right.
That this is religion in the sense Karl Barth put it. It's just about enjoying your life. And grace is nothing it's nothing magical. Its purpose is just to give you, to free you, to make you free for your life. It's not about being free from something. It's about being free for something, for your neighbor, for a purpose in your life, whatever it might be, whatever you might choose, or maybe sometimes whatever God might show you.
That's really good, because I think so often we do have this idea that we can negotiate with God.
No, we can't.
I love the fact that you just boom. Yeah.
No, we can't. Seriously. I mean, there's no way.
Yeah. What do we have to offer him?
Yeah. Well, we can't give him anything he doesn't already own.
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, what can we give him what he hasn't already given to us? Even our life and even ourselves. It all belongs to him. So
I think that's so counter to a lot of the things I see on Facebook, on social media a lot. There's a lot of screaming about well, you did this wrong and you did that wrong, and I'm better than this person because I didn't do that, or and there's so much finger pointing and condemnation, and consistently, whenever there's been something on Sundries or we've had this conversations between the two of us, it's always been about, it's come back to that grace. It's come back to this idea that this truth, it's more than an idea. Thank God for that. But this truth that we are loved, and we can't earn it. Mm-hmm. And
we don't have to.
I don't think we can say that often enough in today's culture, because we do value people according to their contribution or their worth, or whatever, however we want to phrase it. But we as human beings do put price tags on other human beings.
Sure.
And to realize that God doesn't do that is just it's freeing, like you said.
That's the whole Bible is talking about, and even it's getting even worse. I mean, God loves those we don't love. Mm-hmm. So he loves them first. He loves the others too, of course. But first he's with the weak, with the meek, with ordinary people, with the old lady sitting in her apartment, not being able to go outside, maybe because of the bad neighborhood, or maybe because she's ill or whatever, or maybe she's just afraid, or she suffers depression, or the man who's an alcoholic because he just wants to drown all the bad things he has done or he has just seen. This is the other side of the coin named grace. There's a French, I mean actual French word. It goes like noblesse oblige, and it means translated that. I have to describe that. I don't have the proper vocabulary for that. The Bible very often uses the term king for God. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What happens when you are getting baptized? You become the adopted child of a king. Mm-hmm. Being adopted means you have the full rights of the own child of the king.
Right.
So, what are you now since you are baptized? You're a prince or you're a princess. Mm-hmm. So being a prince or being a princess does mean that you don't behave any longer like
one of the commoners.
Yeah, to put it friendly. It means you try to act differently. You try to act like a prince or like a king.
Your actions should match who you are.
Exactly.
Let's try to work out the translation based on like what it like the
obligation of nobility.
Is that? Yeah. Like okay. We've been blessed, so now we have an obligation to.
No, it's not an obligation. I mean, yes, in French it is, but obligation is pretty much comes too near to ethics and morality and works.
I think some of the problems sometimes with Christian theology, the words we have to use to express an idea can get twisted.
Would it be that the grace we've received impels us more than it compels us? Would that be kind of the idea?
I mean, it just flows from you, and you just let it go, let it flow. I mean, don't be a jerk.
Right.
I mean, you are none. Maybe your biography shaped you to be one, but that's not you. It's not necessary to act like a dick. Oops, sorry.
It's okay.
Excuse my French.
Now that we've offended the French audience. No, I think of it in terms of motivation versus motives. If I have motives, then I'm trying to gain something. My motives are kind of
it's
underhanded. Motivated, then that's positive. It is flowing out.
I mean, I see the guy on the paved walk who obviously lost his job, lost um his house and everything else. And I mean, he's just an average guy like me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not different from that guy. I could be there, but so sometimes it's the right thing to give him money. Sometimes it's the right thing to just give him time, listening to him. And sometimes it's the right thing just to go away because he had too much drugs in his blood.
Right.
Right. But
Now we're talking discernment.
yeah,
which is that's maturity, that's growth as a believer, and learning how to navigate those situations.
yeah, but the point is, I mean, after all, we are all human beings, aren't we? And no one is better than any other one. No one is. I mean, there's no need for the attitude of "I'm holier than thou."
Right.
So, it's just. I mean, how do you treat people who can do nothing for you?
Right.
This is the point. And a king, he's just to everyone and everybody. He treats everyone the same. Might he be, or he should do. Might he be a high-born person or low-born person? No difference. That's what the Bible is talking about.
I was listening to you and I'm thinking, like, this dovetails so nicely into where we're heading with the book of Judges. And because the whole book of Judges is about the need for the true king.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's kind of where a lot of us are in our personal lives. We need that true king. We need the rule of the one true king in our own personal lives so that we know how to live, so that we can be empowered to live. And that comes from that gift of grace. And so many of us have been bought into the lie that we have to work harder, be more, all the perfectionist standards that are imposed upon us as Christians that we're supposed to be. And yeah.
As far as I remember, the Bible says there's only one who's perfect.
Yeah.
And it's not us. So why should we try to be perfect? I mean, it's a matter of growth. It's a matter of, I mean, when you are a child, you don't know anything. Or you don't know much. The older you grow, the more you know. And
I hope. I hope that I learn more as I grow older.
Yeah, sure. And that way, it's you stumble, you fail, you stumble again, you fail better, and so on. It's not about. I hate to say that, but it's not about the goal. It's about the way. It's I know Buddhists and but they mean something different by that. It's just like enjoy the life God has given you. Enjoy the gifts, and by gifts I don't mean this that what our charismatic siblings are talking about. I mean just the gifts, the simple gifts of lives, the bare necessities.
I want to break into song now.
As the famous prophets Baloo once sang.
Precisely.
It's just that's the thing about grace. It sets you free to enjoy your life just as it is. And the strange thing is, if you find, and that's a constant process and nothing what you really can work on, in my opinion, if you find the perfect balance between taking care of yourself and taking care of your neighbor, it has something. Oh, what's the word? Healing. There's some healing in it for yourself and for the other person too.
If you figure that out, let me know, because
I'm working on it, and I think, I mean, when we'll see. Some thoughts about that you can read in The Great Divide by C.S. Lewis. Maybe you remember the scene where this woman with this ugly animal on her shoulders, which I think was her addiction. I don't recall it yet.
It's been too long since I've...
Yeah. So we take these things with us, and they will be transformed when we are back home. I mean, we don't belong into this world, do we?
Right.
We're just sojourners, pilgrims.
I love that. And, I think for me, with what I've gone through and the things that honestly people have said should have destroyed me, what I get to come out on the other side going, our God redeems it all. And that is a beautiful thing. And that his grace takes away those ugly monsters and turns them into something different.
Yeah.
But it's just patience and perseverance through that time sometimes.
Yeah.
That this is all about learning. And I think sometimes we forget that this life is practice.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
You make mistakes when you practice.
Yeah, and there is nothing wrong with doing mistakes. This is a very important thing because of grace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you do something wrong, when you even sin and whereas sin is something different from morality, doing things which might socially not acceptable, it's not necessarily a sin.
Right.
But sinning, we do this all the time without even knowing. I mean, just the way we look at a person, or just when we think about this beep hole, it might just a second, and we forget it, but we do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus is quite clear about that. You are sinning, and that's what confession is for. You go there and you say, okay, I've sinned, I did wrong, I'm sorry, and can I have forgiveness? And God says, yes.
Right.
Yes, you can have forgiveness. Don't do it again. And next time you go, oh, sorry, Lord, I did it again. Okay, no worries, I forgive you. Is it that easy? Is it that simple? Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point. Because you can't work for your salvation. I'm not getting tired to repeat that every day, every second. I mean, we talked about this before when.
What did we talk about?
The glass.
Yes. I think you should say it because it was.
Okay.
Yes, it's shocking, but it's so.
Right. Grace is like okay, I'm German, and maybe they won't allow me to come back to the US.
You're always welcome back here.
Yes, but the authorities. I mean, who knows? No, grace is like a glass of water, and if you want to add something to it by doing works. It's just like putting drops of pee into it, and it's nobody would drink it anymore. And it's not the pure grace. Grace needs to be free. Grace needs to be just like that.
I love that.
Yeah, and you can't even accept it. It's grace for you if you accept it or not.
Right.
That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
If you accept it or not. The only point might be. Some people at this point ask me, well, what about those who deny grace? First answer is, how do you know that? And they might deny it now, but you don't know what's going on tomorrow or what's coming next week or next year. Why do you give up hope on that person? And the other answer is, why should God force people to spend eternity with him who really denied his grace?
Right.
But it is not, and I repeat, it is not our task to judge that or to say that about a person. God alone is the judge, and who are we to judge? I mean, we have our own skeletons in the closet, all of us. That means
Nathan's looking at the closet door to make sure it's closed.
Yeah, sure.
It's like I actually have it on the wall here.
I mean, we have a saying in Germany: when you point with a finger to a person, 3 fingers points back to you, and so you better shut up. So.
That's why I just started gesturing with my whole hand.
It's you. Nah.
Laser pointers on the fingers.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you get the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions or?
No, I think we covered some pretty good ground. There's so much more that I would love to ask, but I promise not to go too far off script. I kind of had to warn because
Go on.
no, but I love the fact that we can have this conversation. I think that this is a really good testament to the power of social media, because so often it's vilified that, oh, you spend so much time on Facebook and that's an evil thing distracting you from the good works. But at the same time, it can be a tool. And I think it becomes what you make of it. And I love the fact that, you're sitting here in Nathan's studio house, whatever. And, we're getting to have this conversation, and it started because of Facebook. And it's because you were doing something that was helping you prepare to share the word and helping you do your own research. And all of a sudden it becomes something that touches thousands of people. And I think that's such a great image for us to know that if we're doing what we need to be doing for our job, for our calling, whatever it may be, that we don't know how it's going to play out in other people's lives or where it's going to take us. I mean, you didn't know when you posted a few memes and pictures and quotes from Martin Luther that this was where it was going to end up. And so to me, that's just fascinating to see that journey. So
thank you very much indeed.
We're thrilled. And what you can't see off camera is we actually have George's wife here with us too. And she's a blast. And
we've been having a good time. We've went out to dinner, and then went out, last night went to lunch, and then we're going to spend tomorrow and go see some museums. So that's what I'm really excited about. I just really appreciate you taking time out of going and doing fun things to indulge us in our hobby here.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the page, if you put in Sundries on Facebook, you will find it.
And we'll put a link in the show notes.
That would be great. And please do as well for 1517.org too.
We can do that.
Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, everyone in Facebook,
Internet world.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our time with George. We hope to have him back in the future, but we're not going to take too much of his time, too much more of his time this trip for this. So if you're interested in being part of the conversation, hit us up on Facebook, Raven Creek SC, where you can find us, or ravencreeksc.com. And I think the rest of it, if you hit up the show page, you can find all the links to wherever you need to go. So excellent. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Everyone have a good week. Bye.
Take care. God bless.
You've been listening to the Faith and Other Oddities podcast, a Raven Creek Social Club production. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you like what you've heard, please write us a review on iTunes or consider supporting us on patreon.com/RavenCreekSC. As always, thank you for listening, and don't forget to join us next week.